everybody, this is Brittany Breon, one half of Chopping It Up with Bree and Real, and I am here today with views from the Arch as well as De-Andrea.
Yeah. How you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Good.
Nice to have you here.
Thank you, glad to be here.
I'm going to start off with just telling people, I guess, exactly what you do.
Okay, so my name is De-Andrea Blaylock-Solar. I am a licensed clinical social worker and a sexuality and relationship therapist. I've been in private practice for several years, but I've owned and operated Sankofa Sex Therapy, where I work with individuals and those in all types of relationships. Okay. So usually, do you see couples or do you see people individually as well? Yeah, I work with folks in all types of relationships. So we may have people who are in your traditional monogamous relationships as well as people who are polyamorous. And I also work with individuals. Okay.
Do you think a monogamous relationship is a realistic expectation for modern relationships today?
I think so. I think that monogamy is a choice. And with that choice, making sure that you are very honest with yourself. Now, I don't think that the ideas of non-monogamy give an excuse for cheating, because at the core of non-monogamous relationships is trust and communication with all parties involved, so you can then make your own informed decisions of how you want to move forward. But yeah, I do think that monogamy is something that is attainable, but it's a choice, and with the choice you have to be very honest and also willing to stick to those parameters that you set for yourself. Okay, so when you are seeing your clients, is it usually because of issues with sex, such as erectile dysfunction or issues with orgasming? Yeah, absolutely. So I work with people with diagnosable sexual dysfunction, which is, as you said, orgasmic difficulties, which could be related to erectile dysfunction, or those with vulvas, maybe inability to orgasm. Not just people with vulvas, everyone can have that challenge, but there may be painful sex or any other myriad of issues specifically related to sex and sexuality. However, I also work with people who come to me who may not necessarily have a sexual issue, but they want relationship therapy. So that's another issue. Also, I work with individuals who may not have diagnosable sexual dysfunction, but they want to work through issues related to ideas about sexuality and Christianity. So in undergrad, I minored in theology, and I've also taken some graduate level theology courses, which I think prepare me to hold space for folks to kind of work through some issues that they may have related to sexuality and Christianity. So although I'm a Christian, I only provide therapy from a Christian perspective when it's requested by my clients. Oh, okay.
Like she just said, like men may go through erectile dysfunction, or it may be a dry spell with the women. Is there something wrong with that? Like you said, it could be other things for us, like stress, maybe trauma that they've been through as a child.
Yeah, all of that can definitely influence how we relate to ourselves and relate to other people sexually. So erectile dysfunction, often, I'll just use that as an example. Often I will instruct my clients to work with their physicians to see if there are any physical issues going on. But then if there aren't, or if they've tried some of the little blue pills that help with blood flow, right? Then we'll work on the other side of it. Is it related to stress? Is it related to performance anxiety? Is it related to relationship difficulty? Sometimes if you can get an erection in certain situations, but not with your partner, maybe it's related to, So that's not something that a blue pill can fix. That's something that we're working on in therapy. Okay. Also, so if you do have those clients that have the issues, like maybe, I'm not sure, maybe like a porn addiction, right? So do you just tell them to stop, or give them a, like a treatment plan?
It can mess up having these high expectations from watching these porn and mess up your sex life.
Yeah. So I'm a certified sex therapist in the organization where I got my certification through. We don't look at, we don't believe that porn addiction is a thing or sex addiction is a thing. However, we do understand that we can have compulsivities or out of control sexual behaviors that then influence how we interact with our partners and act for ourselves. And so for that example, I'm glad you brought that up. A lot of times people get their only sex education from porn, which sets you up for failure and unrealistic expectations, because often there's not a build-up. It just cuts to what it is, and then you enter into a situation with the partner, and you're like, well, why are they not wet already? Well, why, or why is my partner not hard? And we have these unrealistic expectations. We think that sex ends with the ejaculation, but sex may not always end that way. But if porn is your only sex education, you're not talking about pleasure, you're not talking about mindfulness, you're not talking about just all of the other things that sex can provide, connection with someone.
I think that comes with growth.
Yeah, it does.
For sure.
It does.
You
don't know none of that.
Yeah.
But you can still have good, healthy sexual experiences. And I'm not anti-porn, but I do think that if that is your only source of sex education, it can set you up for some unrealistic situations.
So I got a question on that. When is the right time for a parent to talk to a child about sex? Like you're saying, I never had that talk.
Yeah, I think it's from womb to tomb. One of my homegirls, who's also an amazing sex therapist, says that. But from womb to tomb, talking about sexuality is not just the mechanics of sex. It's also issues of consent. So you can introduce the idea of consent to your child. If they say, I don't want to hug Aunt Bunny, well, don't force them to hug Aunt Bunny, because there may be a reason for that, Thinking about children masturbate because it feels good. They may do it as self-soothing. So instead of saying, don't do that, you're not supposed to touch that, it's like, you know what, I know that feels good, but this is something that we do for ourselves, maybe when we're by ourselves, but it's not something to share with other people. You have to have permission to share sexual experiences, right? So that goes again to the idea of consent, and you're not shaming. So with little babies, you can introduce that idea. Also talking about gender expression. A lot of times kids say whatever is on their mind, whether it's the right time or not. And so we often have opportunities to broaden their perspectives and give them opportunities to learn. But when we shame them or push it aside, or you're not supposed to talk about that, then it makes it feel as though something is wrong with it. But just, even if you don't have the answers, just giving them the open space to ask the questions. And then as a parent, it's like, you know what, I don't know, but let me connect you. Let's find the answer together. So from womb to tomb.
So do you believe that it's healthy to stop having sex? If someone's just I'm done with sex, I'm celibate, and just, do you feel like that's healthy?
I think that people can enter into different periods of celibacy for a variety of reasons, which can be healthy, whether that is to focus that energy on something else, or to decide, for this period, I'm going to be celibate. But when you are entering that, on the basis of shame, if it's related to, religious guilt, God doesn't love me if I have sex, then it's okay, well, let's examine this a little bit, where that's coming from. I'm not shaming people who decide to wait to have sex, but really it's important to examine the layers beneath that and the why. But periods of celibacy can definitely be helpful and healthy, even if it's tied to religious reasons, but really understanding that shame is a weight that we don't have to carry.
What about like outside of the physical aspect of sex, like the spiritual aspect, like people say like that's like soul transfer.
Yeah, so okay. This is one of my things. I do not believe in soul ties, and I'll tell you why.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't believe in it. Now, I do think that soul ties are an over spiritualization of emotional connection, right? And often people will say, I can't get rid of this person, or I can't leave them alone because my soul is tied to them. Nah, baby, you got digmatized, and it's hard to let that thing go. And you may have had feelings for that person, but that's an emotional connection. So like, let's figure out what's behind that. It makes me think about how people are always saying, the best sex is tied to the most toxic person. But it's like, is it really? Or is that the only connection you had with that person that made it feel like it was so great? And so I think that sex definitely can be a spiritual activity. One thing that I do is I like to help people find ways to infuse spirituality into their sexual practices. However, the idea of like a soul tie or being tied to someone because you have sex, like that's an interesting thought, but I think that idea was created to further shame people, specifically women and girls within Christendom, to feel bad about having sex outside of marriage.
So what about people who have STIs that are non-curable, such as herpes or HIV? So when they come to you, what advice would you give them if they feel like, I just don't want to have sex no more, or I don't want to tell? Ooh, that's dangerous, right? But I don't want to tell nobody.
That's dangerous. People do that, and I think for that idea of I don't want to tell, I would work with them on the ideas of guilt and shame as it's related to that. People do have. It's kind of like a scarlet letter, you have herpes, you got that thing, but the problem is that it is incredibly common.
I know a woman like that. She's married, she has children now.
It's very common. You can still have a very healthy life, a very healthy sex life, but it's important to be open and honest with your partners so that you can, so that they can make decisions for themselves as well. And if they choose not to continue to relate to you sexually, that's their choice. But, it goes back to how I was talking about consent with teaching kids consent. It's the same thing, right? Making sure that your partners are fully consenting. And also making sure that you are utilizing safer sex practices if you're not fluid bonded with that person. So,
yeah. And then speaking on safe sex, so you'll hear all the time that, oral sex without a condom, it's fine, you can't get pregnant. You can still get an STD.
Straight up.
And it's like, I know when I'm talking to guys, I'm like, hey, when the last time you've been tested? And it's kind of like, why are you asking me that? Like, it's it's like they get offended. And I'm just
going
like,
to the hospital.
Yeah.
Right.
To the clinic,
Yes. It's important to know your status, especially if you are, if you have multiple partners, even if you have one partner. But it's important to get tested to know for yourself what's going on. And flavored condoms should not be used for penetration, any type of penetration. The purpose of for a lot of reasons.
They call what's the thing? The pH balance throw.
Yes, it does, because
that's it, right?
that's it. Because flavored condoms within the flavoring, there's usually some type of sugar. And sugar within a vagina is not a hospitable environment. Actually, it's very hospitable for bacteria to grow. So, like, if you're having it, the whole purpose of a flavored condom is oral sex to make it more pleasurable for the giver. But you don't use flavored condoms for inserting anywhere, except for a mouth.
I saw somewhere where they are now making the first anal condoms.
Oh yeah,
specifically for anal.
well, so the thing with that is that the research coming out talks about how it is specifically able to decrease the rate of STI transmission through anal sex.
Okay.
So it's not that the condom is so different, but just that the research was different. And so because the research was different and they tested this specifically, then they can market it that way. However, beforehand, general latex condoms could be used to prevent STI transmission with anal sex.
Okay. I have a question in regards to like the people that do come to you or your clients. How many of them are just not educated in regards to sex? Where it's like, you know, a lot of people didn't have that talk. I didn't have that talk as, you know, as a youngster. So I had to learn as I went. So I guess it's like, is that something you experience where a lot of your clients are just not educated when it comes to sex?
Yeah, absolutely. So excuse me, I should have brought my vulva puppets, but I have anatomically correct genital models. And sometimes specifically for people with vulvas who have not orgasmed. So first we help them to come up with a definition of what that is, because sometimes people will confuse or conflate orgasming and squirting. And it's like those are two different things. So like we talk about that. We also talk about how, going back to the idea of getting your sex education from porn, not everybody's gonna squirt across the room. That's just not gonna happen. You know, your body may not do that, but what your body can do is wonderful. So let's celebrate what your body can do. And then also talking about how statistically, most people with vulvas need some type of direct clitoral stimulation in order to achieve orgasm. So if I have a client that comes in and they're saying, well, I'm not able to have an orgasm, is anything wrong with me? So we'll talk, well, what is sex to you? What's happening? What's going on? And if they're only having penis and vagina penetration, then let's talk about how you may need some clitoral stimulation or some other type of stimulation in order for you to have an orgasm. Okay. So yeah, I get it a lot.
And I guess how often should people have sex or masturbate?
However often feels good for them. There's like not a
I'm sorry. Would that like overstimulate you if you do it too much? And say that.
Yeah, not necessarily. So I have a few thoughts, right? So how we were talking about. You were talking about the idea of sex addiction, and I introduced the idea of out of control sexual behavior. So if whether that's solo or partnered sex, if that is getting in the way of you doing like your normal, regular duties that you're supposed to do, like you can't go to work, you can't go to this meeting unless you let one off, then we're talking about out of control sexual behavior. But if it's just, I am aroused, I'm gonna knock this off and I'm gonna go about my day, do your thug thizzle. Now, the overstimulation part, not necessarily, but what happens is that if you are used to orgasming, laying in this particular position with this particular stimulation, your brain kind of gets wired to that. So then it may be a challenge to orgasm in other situations. So let's say someone with a vulva masturbates with one particular type of toy on one particular setting, holding it one particular way, and then they can't orgasm with a partner. So let's switch up our masturbation practices because your brain is just used to orgasm in that way. It's not used to orgasm in different ways. Doesn't mean that you're desensitized or anything, but your brain is just wired that way. You just got to switch it up.
Yes. Like you said, all that stuff is important, like I guess the build up, the foreplay, even like with the Kama Sutra.
Yeah, so I don't really use the term foreplay anymore because it's all play, right? And I think that a lot of times we put intercourse on a pedestal, like everything happens before intercourse, but it's a whole bunch of people who have wonderful sex who don't have intercourse, right? So all of it is play, and all of it can be part of an enjoyable sexual experience. But yeah, it's all important. The Kama Sutra, it's got some, different ideas for different positions and whatnot. You got to stretch first, but make sure you hydrate, But yeah, all of that can be helpful.
Okay. So when I was doing my research, do I have time for another question? Okay. When I was doing my research, I did see a lot of articles where it was like people are sad after they have sex. So when I was reading that, I was like, so does that mean they need to stop having sex? Like, why are they getting sad? So
it's interesting. There is a phenomena, I can't think of the name of the term, but it's like post-coital depression or something like that. But there are different brain chemicals that are involved when we are having sex, or whether it's having sex or being physically close to someone. And sometimes after an orgasm, people may then experience a flood or a rush of different brain chemicals. So that is something that happens, and someone can work with the therapist to kind of decide how they're going to treat that. Because they may not want to stop having sex, but they may want to put things in place to help them deal with that sadness afterward.
Okay, you also, like you said, you have people come in for relationship advice. Do you think it's a such thing as a perfect partner, or you just gotta find someone, I guess, who kind of fits your love language in a sense? Or is that the best option? Who knows?
Yeah, so I don't believe in the concept of the one. I used to, but what made me change my ideas was becoming a widow. My first husband passed away. We were 35 in 2016.
I'm sorry,
and thank you. And thank you. And I remember I had a conversation with God. I was like, look, I'm too young and too fine for this to be it. Nah, you took away something good. I don't know what you're doing. But anyway, like, that really made me think, like, this idea of the one, because that's what we're taught. You have this one, and you're this one person in all of the world, and if you're lucky to find them, that's it. And at 35, I wasn't ready for that to be over. And so I remarried last November. Thank you. And I think that it is possible to have wonderful, loving, supportive relationships with people, even if your love languages are different. The challenge, though, is to step outside of yourself to provide the needs of the other person and find someone who's willing to do the same thing for you. For example, someone whose primary love language is, let's say, physical touch, where another person's primary love language is words of affirmation. Well, if I'm not touchy-feely, right? So if I am not touchy-feely, but I need the words, I need you to tell me that you love me, tell me I'm pretty, tell me all of that, and I'm expecting you to do this for me, and step outside of yourself for me, what do I need to do? I need to step outside of myself and, like, rub your back. And physical touch is not just sex. It could be sitting and cuddling on the couch. It could be walking by and slapping you on the booty. It could be different things like that, but it's just the idea of stepping outside of yourself to help to meet the needs of the other person that you're with. So.
Man, I like the physical touch. I feel like that's my love language, but at the same time, I'm a person who likes his space. Yeah. Well, this idea of having boundaries in relationships, that's something that's very important.
Oh, straight up. As someone who is just like that, I enjoy physical touch, but please give me my alone time. Like, I'm an extroverted introvert. Like, I need my time to recharge, to be by myself and everything. And I need to have a partner who understands that my time by myself is not a rejection of them. But sometimes you might get connected with someone and their attachment style is like, you want to be by yourself. Well, that means that you don't want to be with me, or I did something wrong. No, that ain't it. So it's important that you know what I'm saying? And that's another thing too, for people to realize that everything that your partner does, it don't necessarily have anything to do with you. you know. So and that's another thing. Just I thought about how a lot of times people expect that if you're in a relationship, then solo sex or masturbation is no longer a thing. It can still be a part of a healthy sexual expression, even if you're in a partnered relationship. Now, if you're finding that you would prefer to have solo sex and partnered sex, then that may be something to explore, right? Like, what's going on with that? But your partner may just want to knock one off, or they got a new toy that they enjoy using, you know, and them wanting to do that is not a direct rejection of you. Right. So again, open communication, talking about your needs and boundaries.
Do you think it's okay for men to have sex toys, like have women? They normalize that, but a man, you know, it seems weird. That's what people deem it as. But
no, but it's great though. Like, there are some amazing sleeves, which are masturbatory aids, but like different sleeves that you can use that kind of heighten the sensation of masturbation. There are some that are mechanical, that, you know, are battery operated or you plug in or whatever, as well as some that are just manual. But some of the manual ones can then be used during oral sex too. So yeah, I'm with it. Everybody get toys. Everybody, regardless of your genitals, everybody get toys.
So with sexuality, if you have a client that is a male who says, hey, I've had sex with other men, but I'm not gay, you know?
Hold on.
What?
What?
I'm sure is that a real thing?
Yeah.
Like, but no, that's the double standard. That's the double standard, though, because she may have a female, you know, come in and be like, hey, I've experimented, but I'm not gay. And it's like, okay, you know, so I just kind of want to know, like, you know, that mental of letting the guy know, hey, you experimented, you know, so.
It makes me think about that character on Insecure that dated Molly. And he had the one experience one experience in college where a guy gave him head, and he was like, I tried it one time, it wasn't my thing, it never happened again. And she like, he gay. And it's like, but that's not how he identified.
Right.
That was a one-time thing for him. And then for some other men who may have had sexual experiences with men, they're not necessarily interested in having relationships, but they enjoy anal penetration, and that's just what it is. It's just something separate from attraction for them.
Yeah.
So sexuality and attraction, like, those are very it can seem complicated, but like, just giving people space to identify how they identify without judgment, that can be a challenge. But I think at the root of it, it's this idea of, can I compete with your past? Why you try to compete with somebody's past? You know, because if they're committed to you and they with you, they with you.
It shouldn't matter.
You know, but that's our stuff that we're projecting onto them. That's why I keep having jobs.
Like, that's even a thing, I believe it's called pegging, with the female having
like a strap on.
Yeah, a strap on with their male. And it's like, I don't know, I guess it's just like, it's such a taboo thing, like, oh my gosh, we're judging them. So it's like, a lot of times people are doing stuff behind closed doors. Whereas,
shame.
With shame and guilt, like you were saying.
That's it. But the thing is, the prostate is located within the anus for those who have penises. And so, like, with that being stimulated, that can help folks to have great orgasms. But if you think that having anal penetration then changes, or any kind of anal stimulation changes my attraction or who I am, then a lot of people don't even experiment with that. So.
It's like the male G-spot.
That's exactly. It's the G-spot. That's it.
Like, it was a show on Netflix called Love is Blind, first season. and the guy, I want to say his name was Carlton, but he had came out to the girl and basically told her, hey, I'm bisexual, but I want to pursue you. And it was just like her reaction, and it just was like a big blowout.
Yeah, they was both a little messy.
It was a lot. And I remember talking about it on my podcast, and I was just like, you know, we say we want honesty. We say we want, you know, a guy to just keep it real with us. But then when they are keeping it real, it's like your reaction is, So.
Yeah. And I think that that situation specifically, because I didn't watch the whole season, but I saw that scene. And I think that both of them were kind of wrong in the sense that he didn't really give her a chance to absorb it or just think about it, and just immediately started attacking her and talking about her wigs or whatever, and then she started attacking him, and it was just a bad situation. Like, it was a model of how not to do things. But for sure, it's definitely an issue where we want our partners to be honest and open with us, but then when we meet them with judgment and meet them with condemnation, then it's like, well, why am I going to trust you with this tender part of me?
I say one last question. I know I asked you about monogamous relationships in the beginning. What are your thoughts on polygamous relationship?
So polyamorous, I think polyamory, or I'll use the term non-monogamy because it encompasses various ways of having non-monogamy, whether that's polyandry, polygamy, polyamory, open relationships, whatever. I think that non-monogamy is a great choice for people who are oriented that way. I don't think that people should go into it as an excuse to cheat. But if they want to have multiple relationships, however that looks, being open and honest about it is a great way to do it. And then non-monogamy looks very different depending on the relationship. Some people have an open relationship where it's a don't ask, don't tell. I don't want to know what's going on, but I know that you have something. Some other people have what's referred to as kitchen table, where they talk about everything. So I think it's a great option for people to be open and honest if they do. If they are oriented to having multiple relationships. And also, monogamy is there too. But it's all about choices, and it's all about open communication.
Well, I was just piggybacking on what you were saying. I feel like when you're dating, you're kind of in a poly situation because you're getting to know people. And I know that used to be a struggle for me because I'm like, oh, I like him. What you mean you're getting to know other people? But it's like the more I kind of just worked on myself and focused on me, and it's like, okay, I'm just focused on what we got going, then we'll talk about it if we want to move to the next step. And
I think that's rooted in a lot of different things. Just this idea that you have to settle down with one person, and if you're talking to multiple people, what does that say about you as a person and all of that? So, like, it's important to sift through all of that so that you can have healthy relationships that help you to feel edified and supported and loved and all of that, regardless of what somebody else says you should or shouldn't have.
Let people know where they can find you at.
Okay, perfect. So you can find me. I was about to start rapping. You can find me. Okay. Right. But I'm SankofaSexTherapy.com, which is my website. At Sankofa Sex on Twitter and Instagram. And I have an old YouTube show called Ask a Sex Therapist, which I plan to be reviving this year. But yeah, I'm very active on Twitter and Instagram at Sankofa Sex.